The channel has reached 60,000 subscribers, so this video is a thank you for all of you. Typically, whenever I hit a subscriber milestone, I play with a mythical Pokemon and I do a Q&A video, but I'm not going to do that this time. Instead, because this video is a port back, I want to focus on Celebi. Now, in order to pull this off and play Celebi in Pokemon Yellow, I used the PokeYellow disassembly to recompile a ROM and add Celebi to the game. I'm not legally able to distribute that ROM, but I have made a patch file and linked it in the description. You can use this file along with a website that I've provided to patch your own ROM and then do a playthrough just like me. Okay, so one more thing that's in the description, the rules for this challenge. Check them out if you're curious why I'm making a certain choice. Now, let's talk about Celebi. It was easy to port back its base stats because it has 100 in everything, just like Mew. It also has a medium slow growth rate, which by the way, for these solo challenges is the best growth rate, at least in Generation 1 and 2. Maybe in Generation 3 the fluctuating growth rate will eventually be better than the medium slow growth rate, but I'm not sure. Now its typing is Psychic Grass. The Psychic type is amazing in Generation 1, and the Grass type isn't very good offensively. However, Victreebel and Vileplume both performed extremely well, so maybe Celebi is destined for success. It does take 4 times damage from bug moves, and other than that, it is weak to fire, poison, ice, and flying. So now let's talk about the tricky part of all of these backports, which is choosing which moves the Pokemon should learn. When I first started doing videos like this with the Misdreavus video last Halloween, I basically just looked at the Generation 2 learn set, made some choices on my own, and put together a move pool that way. However, now with more experience, I have learned that there are much better methods to constructing a move pool that would be more faithful to Generation 1. So here are the steps and checks that I go through when putting together a Generation 1 move pool. First of all, I look at the Generation 2 move pool, and if there are any Generation 1 moves on it, then I just put those into the Generation 1 move pool. Then I look at moves that were introduced in Generation 2 and see if I can find a Generation 1 equivalent. For example, in this case, Celebi starts with Heal Bell, which basically removes any status conditions from it. I thought that a similar move is Haze in Generation 1, however, in the end I decided not to go with this move because it just felt too weird having an Ice move on a Grass type. I really don't think that Game Freak would have done that in Generation 1, especially when Haze is used by Pokemon like Golbat. Next up is the move Ancient Power, which doesn't exist in Generation 1, and it really should exist in Generation 1 because there are only 2 rock moves, Rock Throw and Rock Slide. I figured that Rock Slide was a little bit too powerful with 75 base power, so I decided to give Celebi Rock Throw just so it does have a rock move, but it's not too strong. Plus, this is basically going to be the only physical move that Celebi has access to on its level up learn set, so I'd rather have a rock move than skip one. Next is Future Sight, and this psychic move is absolutely useless in Generation 2, so I decided that in Generation 1 it should also be a useless move, so why not Psywave? I do realize here that Celebi is all about time traveling and stuff like that, and Future Sight has a lot of flavor, whereas Psywave is just a psychic move, but we don't have any other time-based moves, so we're just gonna move on. Also here, Celebi learns Baton Pass, and I just gave it Whirlwind because it seems like this thing would have Whirlwind, and it's about switching Pokemon, and Whirlwind does nothing in trainer battles, so it doesn't matter anyways. I just needed another move. We're gonna put that there. Now let's move on to TMs and HMs. For these, there is actually a really good method to figure out exactly what the Pokemon would have learned in Generation 1. First of all, we have any TM and HM moves that it can learn in Generation 2, and then we can look at its Generation 3 learn set and specifically look at the move tutors. Many of these were essentially created to replace the Generation 1 TMs like Body Slam, Swords Dance, Double Edge, and so on. So by looking at this set of moves, we get a really good sense for what moves Celebi would have learned in Generation 1. In this case, we are specifically going to focus on the Fire Red and Leaf Green tutors, because those are the ones that are replacing the TMs from Gen 1. So in this case, it can learn Double Edge, maybe Dream Eater, Metronome, Mimic, Substitute, and Swords Dance. In the end, I decided not to give it Dream Eater because it doesn't learn a sleep-inducing move, and in Generation 1, they weren't giving Pokemon access to this move unless they could put the opponent to sleep. In Generation 2, that changed. They start giving Pokemon access to Dream Eater, I think just to counter sleep strategies like Rest. Okay, so now we've reached the final stage of my step in deciding a move pool, and here I'm just going to quickly scan through all of Celebi's future learn sets. I guess this is Celebi's chance to time travel. What I realized here is that in the future it starts learning some electric type moves, however it never gets access to moves like Thunderbolt. So to add some of that flavor to its moveset, I gave it Thunder Wave, but decided to withhold Cold, Thunderbolt, and Thunder. And now we are basically ready to jump into this playthrough. By the way, for all of these, I am backporting the front sprite from Generation 2, and then I have to design and create the back sprite all by myself. I usually use a downscaled version of the Generation 2 sprite, and then do the pixel art around that. Alright, so let's talk strategy. Since Celebi starts with Confusion and it has Recover, I am going to be able to defeat Brock on minimum battles. That means only defeating the rival in the lab, and then the one mandatory bug catcher in Viridian Forest. Because Celebi is a medium slow growth rate, it is level 8 by the time I make it to the first gym leader. The disadvantage of playing an early portion of the game on minimum battles is the fact that even when you have a powerful move like Confusion, which deals special damage, you have to knock out Brock's Pokemon over several turns. In this case, it takes Celebi 3 turns to knock his Geodude out. And just barely 3 turns. I got a critical hit on the last one. Why couldn't have I had that a little bit earlier? Anyways, let's move on. The experience from the Geodude levels Celebi up to level 9, giving it 25 speed, which is 2 more than the Onix. Before I was speed tied. Having the outspeed here is really convenient because then it can't lock you in bind forever, and whenever it chooses bide, you can just spam a non-damage dealing move, so in this case, Recover. And I should mention that move now because I basically can't lose this fight. If it gets even a little bit scary, I can just go back to full health and then continue using Confusion. So I'm able to take an easy victory over Brock and earn myself the first badge. This one gives a 12.5% boost to my attack stat, which currently is useless because I only have a special move. Okay, so now I'm going to head out onto Route 3, and here I want to talk about minimum battles. In the past, I used to get a lot of comments saying I was doing too much additional training, and that I should be trying to stay closer to minimum battles with my playthroughs. However, what I have learned over 3 years of doing these solo challenges, and yeah, it has been over 3 years since I uploaded my first solo challenge video, so yeah, this is kind of like an anniversary video as well. Anyways, what I've learned in those 3 years is that it is almost always better to not do minimum battles and do a little bit of additional training. Fighting 5 to 10 extra trainers to get 2 to 3 extra levels for some key damage ranges can really make a Pokemon go significantly faster. Also, changing the speed matchup in the mid-game is critical for some Pokemon, so if you level up one more time, you will outspeed a key foe, and then the battle goes from a 10% chance to win to a 90% chance to win. When I do most of these challenges, I'm not thinking about minimum battles as a concept. I really just do the training I need to be able to have the stats and the moves that I need to defeat the next challenge in my way. So, for example, here on Route 3, there are only 4 trainers that I have to fight, and in order to have minimum battles and minimum Pokemon, I have to face the Lass who has 2 Pokemon instead of fighting the Bug Catcher who has 4 Pokemon. Alright, with Route 3 behind me, now let's head into Mount Moon. In this area, I almost always fight the Super Nerd over by the Rare Candy because he gives good experience yields and he only has 2 Pokemon. However, with Celebi, I am going to stay on minimum battles for this entire area. So that takes me all the way down to the bottom floor where I have to face the Super Nerd who is guarding the fossils. He's got 2 poison types and an electric type. Celebi is not having any problems against him today. And after that, I grab the Dome Fossil. Of course, this is always the correct choice. Then there is one more yellow exclusive minimum battle, which is Jesse and James. They're easy to sweep, and with that, Celebi has made it to Cerulean City. So now as I head towards Misty's gym, I want to talk about her AI. She has what is called good AI, which really should be called super effective AI or something like that. Basically, whenever her AI is choosing a move, it is going to prioritize a move that is super effective. If it cannot find a move that is super effective, then it is going to deprioritize moves that are not very effective. So in this case, with Misty, all of her water moves are not very effective, so she's only going to be using Tackle or Harden against Celebi, and that makes this fight completely trivial. I can knock the Staryu out with 3 hits from Confusion. Tackle is doing so little to Celebi. After that, Starmie comes out. Here, I'm going to go for Leech Seed on the first turn just so I have reliable damage. After all, this thing resists Confusion. Then I start to chip away at it, and an added advantage here is the fact that I inflict Confusion on the Starmie, so it's damaging itself as well. Now, all of this time I was figuring that I have Recover as a backup, just in case the Starmie does too much damage to Celebi, but it's doing nothing to me. I basically heal all of the damage that it does to me with Leech Seed. So yeah, Celebi defeats Misty and clocks in with a time of 7 minutes and 5 seconds. That is unbelievably fast. it's not 5 minutes and 27 seconds, which is my best Misty split that I got recently with Victory Bell. By the way, I did a new playthrough with Victory Bell because someone in my Patreon Discord server was posting some incredible results with the thing, and I got kind of competitive and I was just like, I gotta see if I can do better. So I did a couple streams on a weekend over on Twitch and did like 5 Victory Bell playthroughs, I think it was, and the time that I got was very shocking. I was able to get Victory Bell's time down from 39 minutes all the way to 36 minutes and 27 seconds with 0 resets. By the way, this is a game time of 2 hours and 24 minutes. So I've updated all my data to reflect that Victory Bell is still the best Pokemon in the tier list, but it has raised the bar, so it's going to be harder and harder for Pokemon in the future to get to this kind of performance. I'll just quickly mention the main strategical change I made for Victory Bell. It was specifically to use Mimic during the Agatha fight to steal Lick, and then set up with Swords Dance and use the super effective physical ghost move to sweep her ghosts. By doing that, I didn't have to rely on as much luck, so I shaved off the resets that I had previously and clocked in with a better time. Obviously, this did mean that I lost Razor Leaf for later in the fight, but that doesn't actually matter because Victory Bell can mimic good moves like Ice Beam on Lance and then Earthquake for the champion. Alright, so let's get back to the Celebi playthrough. Obviously, you just saw that the rival is very easy. I did learn Rock Throw during this battle, and that can help a little bit heading out onto Nugget Bridge, because there are some bug types and flying types here. It was at this point that I was realizing just how good Celebi is. The fact that it starts with Recover makes it essentially invincible in the early game. Like, what Pokemon is going to deal enough damage to it that it would get the one hit when I am on full health? If I was hit by a powerful bug move, like the modern incarnation of Leech Life where it has base 80 power, Celebi would definitely go down, but all of the bug moves in Generation 1 are terrible, and almost no NPC Pokemon know them. That leaves for the early game poison moves, which are all quite bad, and flying moves, which the most powerful one is Peck, because Gust is not a flying move. Anyways, yeah, Celebi is just on a complete tear. So in this case, I make it through all of Nugget Bridge on minimum battles. However, on the next route, Route 25, I make a choice that takes me away from minimum Pokemon, which is to fight this hiker here who has 2 Pokemon instead of fighting the other guy who has only 1 Onix. The reason I do this fight is just so I can grab the elixir that is hidden behind him. Also, it doesn't even take that much more time because the battle animation is only playing once, so really I'm adding like 5 or 6 seconds to the timer here to grab one more item. With that, it is time to save Bill and then head towards Vermilion City, because up next is the SS Anne. Here is where minimum battles end. I wanted to play really safe and pick up Rest. I know that technically I could probably skip this because Recover is filling that niche, but it doesn't heal status conditions, so I wanted to have Rest just in case I need it in the late game. After that, I am of course going to skip Body Slam. Normally, that youngster is one trainer that will also take you away from minimum battles. After that, I grab a rare candy. This is a third trainer that can take you away from minimum battles because you have to fight the gentleman to get the candy. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, I'm going to stop talking about minimum battles and let's take on the rival. Here, we can see just how dominant Celebi is. One-hit KO on the Spearow, one-hit KO on the Rattata, one-hit KO on the Sandshrew, and to round things out, a one-hit KO on the Eevee with a critical hit. Okay, so let's head into Surge's gym because of course, Celebi resists electric attacks. Also, I'm not even going to roll an intro here, we're just going to watch the regular animation because I outspeed Raichu, it has 65 speed, my Celebi has 68 speed. As a result, I think this is going to be a dominant performance. Unfortunately for me, Confusion isn't doing that much, only 1/4. Raichu goes for Growl, I go for Leech Seed so I have consistent chip damage, maybe this will give me a knockout with one less turn. Then Raichu goes for Growl again, I start attacking again, it goes for Mega Punch and does so little. At this moment, I knew that I had won, so yeah, Surge is bad as always. And this third victory for Celebi rounds out its dominant performance for the early game. However, now that we are moving into what I consider to be the mid-game, it is going to continue being dominant. It one-hit KOs all of the Wrapping Lasses Pokemon. The Pokemaniac inside of Rock Tunnel is a little bit more annoying because the Slowpoke slow me down. However, the Self-Destructing Hiker is obviously a series of 3 one-hit KOs, and then even the Gambler outside of the tunnel, who has 2 fire types, is very easy. The Vulpix does survive, but it's not that good, it only knows Ember, so I easily win. I think it's worth noting that up until this point, I have used no TM or HM moves. That is quite rare for most Pokemon. Usually you're going to learn something like Water Gun, Bubble Beam, Seismic Toss, Dig, Body Slam, or perhaps even Rest in a terrible circumstance. But with Celebi, it hasn't had access to any of these. However, all of that is going to change now, because once I reach Saffron City, I'm going to get access to Psychic. However, before I do that, I want to do a few errands. I am going to go into the hideout. I'm just going to do a short version of it here, grab the PP up by the entrance, and then also the rare candy, but I'm going to skip everything else. Because I skipped all the other items, I can get only 3 vitamins. I'm going to pick 3 calcium in this case. Then I grab Fly and head to Saffron City, where I teach Psychic in the place of Leech Seed. That does mean we're not going to see any Leech Seed and Toxic strats today, but yeah, I don't know when we're ever going to see that. Maybe with Venusaur when I do its replay. Also, the reason I went into the Rocket Hideout was so I could get 2 PP ups, and I can use both of those now on Psychic, just to give this move a little bit more PP. After all, the more I can sustain, the less times I need to visit Nurse Joy. Okay, so I decided to go to Erica's gym next. Usually with Psychic types, I can level up quickly here by defeating all of the trainers. But Celebi is a mythical Pokemon, so I'm going to go straight for Erica, fighting only the mandatory trainer. Now, I think it's been long enough. Let's roll another gym leader intro. Tangela's first. I go for Psychic. It does more than half. Tangela strikes back with Constrict, luckily not lowering my speed, and I finish it off with Psychic. Alright, from here things are going to get much easier because our following 2 Pokemon are poison types. I knock out the Weepinbell in a single hit. Oh, I got a critical hit, that's nice. Then Gloom comes out, and once again I get the 1 hit, with a crit. So Erica did not stand a chance today. Okay, so moving on to the rival in Pokemon Tower, I want to point something out about Psychic. Because it gets the same type attack bonus, Rock Throw, even when it is super effective, is not going to do more damage. So basically from this point in the game, I am just going to be spamming Psychic. In this case, I get 5 1-hits in a row, so the rival was easy. It also gives me an easy way to pass the Chandler, who I call Agatha Jr. because I one-shot her ghosts. And then I use it to sweep Jesse and James' team. Alright, so now let's head out onto Cycling Road. Here I'm going to grab 2 items, the rare candy and the PP up. And then I head to the Safari Zone, where I even started contemplating skipping vitamins, just because I don't think I need them. After that, I head to Silphco. I'm going to fight the optional 10th floor rocket just to grab the Carbos, and especially the rare candy. After that, I pick up the card key, and then I grab Swords Dance. This move might be useful, but Celebi doesn't really have access to many good physical moves. For now, I just want to keep using special moves, so I'll teach Mega Drain in the place of Confusion. And now, let's try the rival at level 34. I doubt that this is going to be possible. This usually needs like level 38, 40, or 43. So this is probably going to be Celebi's first reset. Sandslash is first. I go for Mega Drain, doing half. This thing is locked into Poison Sting because it has good AI. I KO and fully heal in the process. Next is Cloyster. Psychic does more, but only takes it to orange. It strikes back with Aurora Beam, doing 1/3. That is probably the most damage Celebi has taken yet. And then I knock it out. Okay, so time for Magneton. This thing is just so hard to knock out with a physical move or with a special move. By the way, its special stat in Generation 1 is outrageously good. As a result, this mythical Pokemon has to knock it out with 3 hits from Psychic. I tank Sonic Boom in the process, which is not doing so much. So I use Recover twice before I knock it out. That way I'll have green health for the final 2 Pokemon. Kadabra is physically weak, so I go for Rock Throw. I pray to the accuracy gods. It connects and 1 hits. So Flareon is last. I go for Psychic. I'm probably going to 2-hit. Oh, it does less than half? Okay, so then Flareon uses Ember, which does 1/3, and it burns Celebi. I take it to orange, have some status inflicted damage, but then Ember hits again, and this time it crits, doing so much. And Celebi survives with 1 hit point. Okay, so the only way I lose this battle is if I have a Generation 1 miss. And in this case, I don't. So, Celebi defeats the rival when it went in at level 34. Still no resets, and of course, both Jesse and James and Giovanni are not going to cause any resets for Celebi. So now, let's head to the gym where I technically have a type advantage, but also technically don't have a type advantage. Let's go fight Koga. However, before we fight him, I just want to mention that Recover is a good tool to prevent overworld healing. In battles, I can just use Recover to get back to good health, and then once I defeat the trainer, I don't have to open my inventory and use a potion. Honestly, scrolling through the bag is one of the biggest ways to waste time, because on 4 times speed, it can be hard to read all of the items as they go by really quickly. You can miss items, and then like scrolling up and down over and over again trying to find what you're looking for. Also, if you've used items already and you think you have them but you don't, then you waste a lot of time opening the inventory, then you have to close it, go back to the Pokemon Center and heal anyways. Celebi doesn't have any of those problems. So now let's take on Koga. Essentially, in yellow version, he is a poison bug specialist, which should actually be great against Celebi, because the poison type is super effective against the grass type, and the bug type is super effective against both types. Also, note here that the Venomoth does know a bug move, Leech Life, which will hit for 4 times damage, as well as causing it to heal in the process. So what I really need here is to one-hit all of the Venonats and arrive at the Venomoth with full health. Of course, today I am able to do that because Celebi is incredible. Now, it's time for his ace. I go for Psychic, it does more than half, and then Koga's good AI chooses Toxic, which of course is a poison move that should be super effective against Celebi, but yeah, that just gives me a free win here. Let's head to Pokemon Mansion next. Here I'm going to start skipping vitamins. I'll also have 11 rare candies available before the league, and Celebi hasn't encountered any issues yet, so maybe I can just keep saving these. However, Blaine is coming up, so I was a little bit worried about him. When I dig out of the mansion, I get teleported back to Saffron City, so let's go to Sabrina next. However, to make the battle really consistent, I'm going to take a quick detour south of Lavender Town, where I can pick up the TM for Swift, which I teach in the place of Rock Throw. Now you might think, why not face Blaine, use Rock Throw for that fight, and then unlearn it for Swift, but it doesn't work that way. Remember, Rock Throw isn't as good as Psychic, just from a raw damage perspective. It also has 65% accuracy. I do not want to be using this move. So Sabrina is completely trivial. I can waste time by spamming Recover, allowing the Abra to hit me with Flash. This badge boosts my attack stat, making Swift more powerful, and then I can use it to bypass accuracy checks and deal massive damage. I one-hit the Abra, as well as the following Kadabra, and then she sends in her ace, Alakazam. Here I get a critical hit, bypassing my badge boosts, yes, even the intended badge boost, and Alakazam doesn't go down as a result. However, Psywave is not very good, so I survive and take the victory anyways. Now, before Blaine, I want to do one thing to prep. I'm going to teach Thunder Wave in the place of Swift. I think that this can hopefully give me a little bit more consistency against him. Now, I'm ready, so let's do this. One nice thing is that Celebi is able to outspeed all of his team members. However, I have no way to set up, and his Pokemon have decent special stats, so I don't think I'm going to be getting any one-hits here. Also, I'm probably going to take lots of damage from Fire-type moves. Luckily, Ninetales only has one, which is Flamethrower, so it has a 1 in 4 chance of choosing it because Blaine does not have good AI. Now, Psychic is actually really good against Blaine, and that's because it has the chance to lower Special, which would mean that his Fire-type moves would have reduced damage. Also, in Generation 1, the chance that it lowers Special is 33%. I figured that first going for Thunder Wave and then using Psychic to stack on the disadvantages would be able to give Celebi the win. But unfortunately I get confused, and Ninetales hits with Flamethrower, gets a critical hit, and that is my first reset. Okay, so going into the second fight, I think that maybe using Thunder Wave is just wasting time. Let's use Psychic right away, and in this case I get a 2-hit on the Ninetales because of a crit. Next, against Rapidash, my first Psychic lowers its Special, giving me another 2-hit. Okay, so I have high green health remaining for the Arcanine. My first Psychic lowers Special, Arcanine sets up Reflect, which is useless. By the way, Reflect sounds like it would reflect special moves. I don't know if anyone else intuitively feels that way. Whatever. My second Psychic takes Arcanine down to red health, and then it chooses Fire Blast, which Celebi easily survives. So his win condition in this fight was to get a critical hit, and he got that luck in the first fight, but not in the second. And with that, I have earned myself the Volcano badge, and at long last, Celebi gets a boost to its special stat. In the Viridian City Gym, there are 2 mandatory trainers. Fighting both of them takes Celebi up to level 43, where it has 129 speed. Now, Giovanni's Dugtrio has 133 speed and it knows Fissure. Persian has 135 speed and it knows Slash and Double Team. So I really like to outspeed both of those Pokemon. To do this, I'm going to use Rare Candies until Celebi has 136 speed. Conveniently, I get it after only 2 candies at level 45. Okay, so now let's face Giovanni. Alright, everyone watching in the background, I need you to watch this. Mega Drain fails to KO the Dugtrio. I don't think that Psychic would have either. Anyways, the Dugtrio strikes back, hits Sand Attack, and then this happens. Mega Drain misses, Giovanni Guard Specs, Mega Drain misses, Dugtrio Sand Attacks again. I miss, it misses Fissure because it has to. I miss, and I continue to miss. Like, I miss so many times. It is a total of 12 misses. I cannot believe that. By the way, I stopped using Mega Drain because I need to save the last PP just for the Rhydon. Anyways, this is not very nice. Finally, after so long, on the 13th time selecting a move after my accuracy was lowered, Celebi hits with Psychic and knocks the Dugtrio out. However, I only have orange health left over for the remainder of the fight. From here, Celebi misses a little bit against the Persian, but then it starts to get the luck it needs. With my last 3 uses of Psychic, I knocked the Persian out, the Nidoqueen out, and the Nidoking out. So I've made it to the Rhydon. You might wonder why not use Swift. Well, it's not that powerful. I figured I would need multiple hits with it. Maybe it would have been a better choice. I don't know, but I got really lucky. So let's see if I can take out the Rhydon with my last use of Mega Drain. The answer is no, because I miss. However, what I might be able to do is use Recover, Heal, and then whittle it down with Swift slowly. Unfortunately for me though, after 1 Recover, Rhydon hits Rock Slide, which gets a critical hit, and Celebi faints. By the way, the Rhydon has a 7.81% chance to critical hit, so it's not that likely, but it's not like Slowbro's critical hit rate. Anyways, let's try this fight again. I wanted to test to see if Psychic would KO the Dugtrio, but it doesn't. This time it just uses Earthquake, so I don't get my accuracy lowered and then I finish it off. Now, previously the Sand Attacks were badge boosting me, so without them I'm not able to one-hit the Persian. It takes 2 hits to knock out, and then both of the Nidos actually survive a single hit from Psychic. However, Giovanni, in true Giovanni fashion, uses a guard spec on both of them. So, I've made it all the way to the Rhydon, and this time, I am the one that crits, so it goes down with a single hit, and I've earned myself the final badge. Okay, I think it is time to just say that Celebi is having an absolutely dominant performance in Pokemon Yellow. We are under 40 minutes, and I am fighting the rival before the league. In this fight, I actually get poisoned early on against the Execute. However, that's an advantage because I would much rather poison instead of paralysis. Also, in Generation 1, Poison only deals 1/16 of the Pokemon's total health every turn. Starting in Generation 2, this was updated to 1/8. So this is not doing that much, and if I ever need health, I can just use Recover. I get lucky, critting Cloyster, knocking it out in a single turn. Magneton's next, but it can only really use Swift or Supersonic, both of which are not very good. I Swift crit the Kadabra, and Flareon is last. Now this thing has a choice between 3 moves because of my typing: Fire Spin, Smog, or Flamethrower. Psychic gets a special drop, so Flamethrower is going to hit less hard, but the Flareon just picks Smog. Definitely the worst choice. I knock it out, and with that I am off to the league. Now before I start facing the Elite Four, I want to make one moveset change. I'm going to teach Mimic in the place of Swift, because this move is useful against the 5 remaining trainers. And now, I'm ready to take them on. Let's do this. So the first member of the league is Lorelei, and I think that her first 2 Pokemon are going to be the scariest. That's because once I make it to the Slowbro, I can mimic Amnesia and set up my special to ridiculous levels. Plus, in this case, Celebi's typing resists both of its attacks, Psychic and Surf. However, the beginning of the fight isn't so easy because Dugong is first, and it's going to be a 3-hit for Celebi. Luckily in this case, Lorelei's AI is a little bit strange in Yellow version. 2 out of 5 turns, the Dugong, only the Dugong, will treat all of its moves as neutrally effective, so it will essentially randomize between them. Luckily for me, it chooses Rest, healing itself, and that gives me the time I need to finally knock it out. I did have my attack lowered there, but that's not important because I'm just using special moves. Next is Cloister. Now this thing only has one move that it is going to use against me, Ice Beam, and I'm a little bit worried that it's going to freeze me. Remember in Generation 1, you cannot defrost. I don't get the KO, Cloister survives on orange health. It strikes back with Ice Beam, doing half to Celebi, but luckily I'm able to finish it on the next turn. Okay, so now with Slowbro coming out, it is time to Mimic Amnesia and set up. Now one thing that is going to slow me down here is the fact that Slowbro can also set up its own amnesias. This will just mean that my Mega Drain is not going to do as much to it. However, I'm feeling pretty confident for what's coming up next. I get fully set up, and then I knock the Slowbro out. Surprisingly, with +4, it only takes 2 turns with Mega Drain. Okay, so it's time for Lorelei's final 2 Pokemon. Up first is Jinx. Now in this case it resists Psychic, but still it's the better choice for me. However, it doesn't do enough to knock Jinx out, so it goes for Ice Punch, luckily not freezing me, and I finish it off. Okay, so Lapras is next. I get a critical hit on turn 1, bypassing my special setup, which means it survives with about half health. That is quite annoying. Luckily for me in Generation 1, Special is a combined stat, so its Blizzards aren't doing very much to Celebi. I use another Mega Drain, Lapras once again goes for Blizzard, and there's the freeze. Okay, so that's my 3rd reset. In the next fight, I actually critical hit the Cloister with Mega Drain. However, it's just not enough to knock it out, so I'm always going to have to 2-hit here, and then Ice Beam freezes me again. I have to say that this is really frustrating, and by the way, the frustration continues because remember how I have to 3-hit the Dugong? Yeah, it critical hits with Aurora Beam and knocks Celebi out. Honestly, this is the first battle in the playthrough where Celebi is struggling consistently. I've currently saved up 9 rare candies, and I think just making my stats slightly better is going to be the play right now. So let's use 5 rare candies and take Celebi up to level 53. Okay, so can I dodge the freeze on the Cloister? And the answer is yes, that is good. We're just going to cut right to the Jinx now because obviously I set up basically for free on the Slowbro. Now, will 2 damage rounding thresholds give me the 1 hit on this thing? And the answer is no. But I do enough damage to Jinx that it puts Lorelei in the range to use a Super Potion where AI selects to do this, and with that I have made it to the Lapras. Now, in the last fight when I was fighting it, I actually got 2 critical hits in a row, which was the reason I didn't knock it out. In this case, Psychic doesn't get a critical hit, so that's it. I've cleared the first league member. Now up next is the Hiker, and Celebi is perfectly designed to beat his team. Mega Drain for the Onyxes, and Psychic for all the fighting types. Granted, I could just spam Psychic and one-hit everything anyways. So yeah, obviously this fight is a first attempt victory. Now, things are not going to get harder against Agatha because essentially she is a poison type specialist. I have super effective damage with my same type attack bonus move on all of her Pokemon. It's also worth noting that in Generation 1, there is only one ghost type move that gets the same type attack bonus, but even then, the ghost type and the psychic type have a weird interaction because due to a programming error, the ghost type does nothing to psychic type Pokemon. So yeah, I'm going to easily sweep her entire team. One thing I do want to note here is that I mimicked Substitute. This is specifically to avoid confusion. I think that this is overly safe play. I just wanted to ensure that I was in a good position in case I got like a Gen 1 miss or I got hit by Hypnosis. Like, for example, the final Gengar does survive my Psychic, so Hypnosis could have messed me up, but Substitute gives a little bit more of a buffer. There's no Hypnosis today, so I take an easy win as was predicted. So now we're going to move on to Lance. Gyarados is going to be a 3-hit. The move that I was most worried about here was Hyper Beam, especially if it gets a critical hit, but luckily, because of Celebi's typing, it is also choosing Dragon Rage as well as Leer, so I'm able to finish it off. And now I'm moving on to Dragonair number 1. Key here is Celebi's typing. This means that this Pokemon is not going to use its electric attacks, which definitely caused the most worry for me in most playthroughs. I just hate getting paralyzed this early on. Also in this case, that means it has a 50% chance between choosing Slam or Hyper Beam, and if it chooses Slam, it can miss, and Hyper Beam has a recharge turn, and I can basically just heal the damage it deals with Recover. So now let's move on to the second Dragonair. This one is going to spam Ice Beam, so there is a chance that I can lose if it freezes me, but it also gives me a chance to mimic Ice Beam and then knock it out in one hit. Okay, so it's time for Aerodactyl, and notably, this thing has 2 more speed than Celebi. Yeah, just 2. It goes for Fly, but Celebi lives on red health, and then Ice Beam does not get the knockout. That allows Wing Attack to finish me off. It's at this point in the playthrough that I just want to mention to everyone that there are still 4 rare candies sitting in my bag. I should have used them and just gone up to level 60 and then completely smashed Lance, but for some reason I was a bit stubborn and went into the battle again at level 56. However, this time, against the Gyarados, it chooses Leer, which badge boosts my speed stat so that I am now faster than the Aerodactyl. Skipping past the Dragonairs because I do not get frozen, now I can move first, hit Ice Beam, and my special was also badge boosted, so I knock the Aerodactyl out. That means all that's left is Dragonite, which I easily one-shot with Ice Beam, so Celebi has arrived at the champion. This battle starts off with something that we're very used to. It is the Sandslash being locked into Poison Sting. That gives me time to mimic Earthquake, which is very useful against the rest of his team. After that, I KO with Mega Drain so that I'm healing as I do it, and then I move on to the Alakazam. Here, Earthquake doesn't get the KO, which I wasn't really expecting. It strikes back with Psybeam, which causes confusion. Really? That is a 10% chance. Anyways, I KO the Alakazam on the next turn, and then Executor comes out. This thing I do not have a good choice against. It resists all of Celebi's current moves. However, in this case, Psychic is obviously the best choice because it has a 33% chance to lower the opponent's special, which could speed things up. It's also worth noting here that the Executor has terrible moves, so there is no way for it to KO me here. By the way, we get to see another rare healing item because the champion uses his full restore. There's roughly a 12% chance for this to happen, and only when his Pokemon is under 1/5 health. In my challenges, I hardly ever see it, and it's very annoying that he healed the Executor of all Pokemon. Anyways, it's slow to knock out, but I finally managed to do it. Alright, so next is Magneton, and I complain about this thing so much. That's usually because it survives hits, and even in this case with Earthquake and a mythical Pokemon, it does survive. See? This thing is so frustrating. Anyways, I knock it out, move on to the Cloyster, Mega Drain gets a one-hit KO, and all that's left is Flareon. But this thing is definitely not surviving Earthquake. So, Celebi clocks in with a time of 48 minutes and 33 seconds, with 6 resets at level 58. This took 2 hours and 56 minutes of game time. These are incredible results for a first playthrough, and I probably should have expected that because Celebi is a top contender in Generation 2. And I think that it has a chance to be one of the highest ranking Pokemon in my Generation 1 results after a second playthrough. So, let's do it. As a Pokemon who can do minimum battles fairly easy, I don't think I have many things to change, especially in the early game. Brock is completely trivial, Misty is also easy, and Surge is usually terrible, so he's no different today. Like, one thing I did in this section of the game was I cut out the rest TM, but that's not a huge time savings. So how am I going to be able to save a lot of time throughout this playthrough? Well, I had 4 rare candies left over that I didn't use in the previous playthrough, meaning that I can gain 4 more levels, or I can choose to use the rare candies earlier on, giving me more flexibility and more consistency in earlier difficult fights. However, I'm still going to need to make sure that I have a good level for the end of the game to provide consistent damage ranges, as well as outspeeds on key Pokemon like the Aerodactyl, so I'm not getting hit by like a critical hit Fly and then having a reset as a result of that. So in Sylph, I battle 1 additional trainer, this guy with a Magnemite and a Coughing, as well as the guy with the Machoke, and that gives me level 36 after the rival battle. Then once I defeat Koga, my Celebi is going to be level 40. Now, I want to talk about this fight because we should examine the damage ranges, especially when the Venomoth's Leech Life does 4 times damage. I have guaranteed 1-hits on all the Venonats, so I'm going to arrive at the Venomoth with full health, and then my Psychic has a guaranteed 2-hit. Now, you might think that the Venomoth has a chance to 1-hit me, but it doesn't. Its best chance is to 2-hit me with Leech Life, and it only has a 2% chance to do that. Also, Celebi has more speed, so there is basically no way for Koga to win, other than me just getting Gen 1 miss after Gen 1 miss. After that, I take on Sabrina, who is not scary because of my typing, and this brings Celebi up to level 41. And here, I am going to do some optional training by fighting all of the trainers in the fighting dojo to get up to level 43. Now, this is key so that I have a good level by the end of the game, because coming up next is Blaine, and I want to make him more consistent. So before this battle, I am going to use 10 rare candies to take Celebi all the way up to level 53. While it is nice to be a higher level in this fight, it doesn't make it free. I'm going to 2-hit both the Ninetales and the Rapidash, unless Celebi gets a critical hit, which is actually fairly likely because it has a 19.53% chance. However, what I'm assuming in this fight is that each of Blaine's Pokemon is going to hit Celebi at least once, so let's examine his damage ranges. First, if the Ninetales gets a critical hit with Flamethrower, it cannot one-hit Celebi at this level. After that, the Rapidash doesn't really have any good moves against me. Takedown actually does the most damage, so I am just going to knock it out. However, the Arcanine, I only have a 63% chance to 2-hit. So here I am going to use Thunder Wave, and I'm doing this just in case it hits Fire Blast or Flamethrower, then I can use Recover a little bit more safely. However, in retrospect, I think that just spamming Psychic and hoping for the 2-hit is probably the better play. Plus, I can also lower Special, which will reduce its Fire-type damage. Either way, in the end, I get a first attempt victory, so no resets so far. Giovanni is an easy sweep now that I'm at a higher level, so let's just jump ahead to Lorelei, who was the trickiest trainer in the previous playthrough. However, in this case, I'm going into the fight 3 levels higher, so she is going to be easier. Her first 2 Pokemon cannot one-hit Celebi, even with critical hits. So the only flaw here is that the Cloyster can freeze me with Ice Beam. And at this point, I want to talk about a very funny fact about critical hits in Generation 1. Because they bypass all stat changes, especially the beneficial ones, they actually can end up capping your chance to KO the opposing Pokemon when using a setup move. So in this case, when I'm setting up with Amnesia, there is always going to be a chance that I get a critical hit, and in the case that I get a critical hit, I will not knock out. Whereas if I didn't get a critical hit, I'll do more damage. That means there is a 19.53% chance that I will not KO the Jinx and the Lapras, even once I'm fully set up. By the way, this is also the case for the Slowbro, but it can also set up Amnesia, so the math there is a little bit different. It's probably going to take 2 hits to knock out. However, a roughly 80% chance to knock out the Jinx and the Lapras in a single turn is more than enough for me. Plus, there are only 3 loss conditions if Jinx and Lapras actually hit me. I could lose to a freeze from Ice Punch, I could lose to a freeze from Blizzard, or a critical hit from Blizzard. But that is roughly a 12% chance, and Blizzard would have to hit even, so overall, Lorelei I feel quite comfortable against, and I take a first attempt victory. Alright, now I used 10 rare candies, so I have 1 left over because once again I did do the Rocket Hideout in this playthrough, and that's specifically so I can use 1 rare candy to go up to level 60 before Lance. Now this is an incredibly important level, because without it, I do not have a guaranteed 1-hit against the Aerodactyl with Ice Beam. In some cases, like the previous fight, I am totally fine going in knowing that there is some inconsistency, like 20% chance I will not KO this Pokemon, and then a 10% chance it freezes me and I lose. But with a Pokemon like Aerodactyl that is an absolute critting machine, and it also has super effective damage in the form of Fly, I did not want to take this chance, so I figured 1 more level is good to secure the 1-hit with Ice Beam on the first turn and just make Lance completely trivial. So now let's move on to the final battle of the game. It's time for the champion. There are 2 ways that this fight can go wrong. Number 1 is that Alakazam uses Kinesis. This doesn't mean that I lose, but it makes the fight much longer and more annoying. Number 2, the Cloyster could freeze Celebi with Ice Beam. That's just because I don't have a guaranteed 1-hit on it. I would need to crit to knock it out in 1 turn. By the way, in these cases where there is a loss condition like that, like getting frozen by a Cloyster that you have to 2-hit, I always explore what level would be required to 1-hit it, and in this case, Celebi needs to be level 78 to get the 1-hit, so obviously that is not an option because I'm not going to clock in anywhere near this time, training 17 more levels. However, in this case, there's an additional advantage, and that's the fact that Cloyster knows 2 Ice-type moves, so it's choosing between Aurora Beam and Ice Beam, making the chance that it freezes me even lower. Overall, I like these odds. I knock the Cloyster out, move on to the Flareon, finishing it off, and Celebi clocks in with a final time of 40 minutes and 50 seconds, with 0 resets at level 62. This was a game time of 2 hours and 42 minutes. That is to date the third best time that I have got in yellow version. It's just a little bit slower than Gengar, however, Victory Bell is still significantly in the lead. Honestly, so much so that I think that the only Pokemon that is going to contend with it is Mewtwo at this point, but Mewtwo might actually get held back by its slow growth rate. Victory Bell is just incredible. Anyways, this is a Celebi video, not a Victory Bell video. I think the only thing that holds this cute little mythical Pokemon back are the damage ranges, especially in the late game. All of Lorelei's Pokemon just take a few too many hits. This is largely because there is no extremely powerful grass type move. Like, I could use Solar Beam, but it wouldn't reduce the number of turns in the battle. And Mega Drain is the next best option that Celebi has access to, because it doesn't get Razor Leaf. So in the end, it just needs to do a little bit more training to get favorable ranges and secure consistency. And I want to make a point about that because it is very obvious to me that you can complete this run with a faster real time by compromising this consistency. Also, I am entirely sure that Celebi can beat Pokemon Yellow on minimum battles. However, that's not really the style of play that I like to go for. I want to know how the Pokemon can beat the game in a consistent way. Essentially what I'm shooting for is a strategy where if you sat me down at an event like GDQ, I could produce similar results with the Pokemon on every single attempt. Maybe there would be 1 or 2 resets here and there, but overall the time would not be that different. If you start shooting for minimum battles or lower levels of completion, then usually what happens is the spread of results increases. So you'll have some playthroughs that take a lot longer because there are tons of resets, and then you'll have some incredibly fast times as well. I figured that I should just mention that here because Celebi's time can be pushed lower, but with my style of play, that's not really something I'm interested in doing. I know I do a lot of repeated playthroughs, but I would find it really frustrating if these repeated playthroughs were just about searching for like some miraculous luck. The name of the game is essentially try to create a foolproof strategy to give the Pokemon the best results it can get consistently. Okay, so after that short rant, let's talk about these portback videos. So far, I have completed 4 Misdreavus on Halloween last year, then Kingdra, Heracross, and now Celebi in more recent times. So after the next one I do, I'll have 5 results, and I think at that point, I'll have to introduce a tier list. By the way, let me know in the comments which Pokemon you think I should run in this format next. I try to read as many of the comments as is possible. Like, subscribe, and ring the chime echo so you'll be notified when I post new content. If you support me on YouTube or Patreon, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far in the video, you're incredible. I'll see you next time. Just kidding, that's not the end. We have to face Professor Oak. So there's a link in the description that gives you access to the ROM that I used to play with Celebi, but I'm also going to put in that folder the ROM patch that allows you to face Professor Oak. By the way, there are just like 3 Oak sprites in Pallet Town. You can talk to each one of them, and each one will have a different team. Now, his lead, Tauros, is not actually that strong despite it being incredible statistically. It only has Rage and Takedown as damage dealing moves, and it knows both Tail Whip and Leer, which is like such a Generation 1 thing. It tries to lower my defense, and then I just knock it out, so whatever. And now, as you can see, I'm facing the Executor. I figured here that I might as well mimic Stomp and use the normal move to knock it out. However, it's still not doing that much damage. I might have actually got faster results just spamming Psychic, going for special drops, and eventually KOing. Either way, Oak does not have a healing item, so he is not going to be able to heal this Executor. Plus, because he has good AI, he is not going to be using Hypnosis against me, so I can just heal with Recover once, and then knock the Executor out. Alright, next is Arcanine. He has 2 fire types because I'm going up against his team when he has Charizard. So Arcanine is actually dealing a lot of damage with Ember when it gets a critical hit. So I get stuck here having to use Recover a few times before it finally hits a non-critical hit Ember, and I go for my second Psychic. However, it doesn't get the KO, so I figured I should use Recover one more time to be on as much health as is possible for the Charizard. After all, while the Arcanine's moveset is pretty terrible, the Charizard does know Flamethrower. I go for Psychic, it does about half. Charizard goes for Fire Spin, trapping Celebi for a little bit and taking me under half health. Okay, please get the KO, and in this case, I do. So all Oak has left over is Gyarados. Now, while this thing is at a high level, I wanted to play safe, so I use Recover to heal up, and then I knock the Gyarados out over 3 turns with Psychic. So Celebi keeps its 0 reset streak by defeating Professor Oak.